Well, I finished adhering all the tessera to the Thermasheet. Now I need to actually adhere the Thermasheet to the wall. But I just thought I would show you the overall design before I actually start adhering the Thermasheet to the walls. But I think it's looking really quite good. Well, I've made a couple of changes and I've decided to actually use this timber moulding instead of these tiles, these capping tiles. Reason being is because I don't have enough of these, and I would either have to have them sent out by the post or I would have to go and get them, which is a reasonable drive. So I thought, look, it's going to be a lot more cost effective and quicker if I bought some of this wooden moulding, which I just went down the local hardware store and purchased it. And it's quite similar to the actual original tiles, and it's the same width or the same height. So it's going to work in really, really well. And I'm going to paint this a gloss black, I think is what I'm going to go with. And then I'll make a decision on, do I run this moulding all the way down this side here, or do I add the tile that I've got here down the side on each end? I'm not really quite sure, but you know, I'll think about that and then make a decision on it. Now, on another note, this board or this Thermasheet that came from that end there in the video one, I actually had this a bit longer, and as I got close to actually coming to the end of this board, mosaicing it, I was then going to cut it off. Normally I would cut everything off to size, but I thought, no, I will do something a little bit different, and it didn't work because what I did was I kept actually doing the mosaic without cutting it off. So this end became longer. So what I had to do was I actually just had to cut that edge off there and just slot that in behind like that, slot that behind the edge of this board here, and it works really, really well. So I'm glad I got out of that. It was my fault. I should have actually cut it off to the right size before I began adding the mosaic to it, but I decided not to do that, which was an absolute mistake. And then by cutting that off, I then had to just readjust this side as well. So I just cut this end off just a little bit so that it was wide enough for either this capping tile or this wooden moulding. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to now adhere the Thermasheet, the mosaic on the Thermasheet to the back wall, and I'm going to use Sidal Fix All Crystal Clear, which is an SMX polymer. It works similar to a silicone, however it doesn't contain the solvents because I don't want to be breathing those solvents in while it's curing. So I'm using this one, and I find this works really well. So I'm going to prepare this area and then we can then adhere the mosaic to the wall. Now I've just put plastic down to protect the surface because I don't really want to get any of this fix-all onto the surface or any other adhesive. I'm working with another type of adhesive. I want to make sure that my surface here is protected, so it's always good to do that. I'm going to keep now the Sidal away from the edge because when I apply this to the actual wall, I really don't want that Sidal Fix-All to squeeze out everywhere. So I'm actually going to apply it probably around about 3 centimeters in off the edge there. So I hope you can see this and I don't get in the way. Here we go. I don't like to cut off too much of the nozzle first because in case you cut off too much, so it's always best to cut a little bit off a time and then go, okay, I'll cut off a larger amount. It's always good to do a test first. Okay, that's about all I think I'll need. I'll put that aside. And I know I'm going to be in the way. Make sure it's the right way. Push it into the corner first and then adhere it. And then I'm going to slide it backwards and forwards just a little bit. That's it. There are other adhesives that you can use. This is just one of my favourites, but there's lots in the marketplace. So use what's available in your area that's easy for you to get to. But everyone has their own preferences of what they like. Okay, now we'll adhere this one onto it, onto the wall. Just double check to make sure it's the right side up, which it is. Put it in its place at the bottom and then slide it left to right, making sure it's all in place, which it is. So I think that's looking really quite good. Now the last one. Now on another note, when I've got product left in the tube and I've finished with it and I want to keep it, I always find these caps don't really work that well for me, and some people put screws in the end and all sorts of things. And I really find the best product to actually keep the contents pretty good is Saver Tube. Now these are an Australian product, and they're sold here in Australia. I don't know whether they're sold overseas, and they're not certainly sold through your local hardware stores. But I find taking this end off here and putting the Saver Tube cap off onto the tube out of the gun here, and you just nip it up. I've had it where it's kept product quite fresh for 6 to 12 months, and that's going really, really well. And I've used it different times, so it's not like I leave it on and then I use the tube again. I actually just unscrew it and use the contents, put this on, and I might do that quite a few times a year. And I find this works really well. They're called Saver Tube. I'll put the link down into where you can purchase them from in the actual description box of the YouTube video. Okay, let's go and do the last piece. Making sure it's going to go the right way. And I probably don't need as much of this on each section of mosaic on the Thermasheet, but seeing I have it here, I might as well use it. There's a little bit left, not a lot. Okay, now we'll put this on the end here. Making sure it's up the right way. In at the bottom, tied up against that edge there, and then push it in, and then move it from side to side so it spreads out a bit. There you go. Join's pretty good. It's good all the way around. Well, it's all adhered. I'm going to leave this now for 24 hours for the Sidel to cure. I'm then going to come back and put the tiles in here with Thinset as my adhesive. And in the meantime, I'm going to prep the actual wooden molding. I'm going to prime that and then paint that with a gloss black paint, I think. So we'll come back when I've got everything prepared and the molding adhered.